right, so you've watched the intro video. Hopefully you got an idea of what we're trying to do here. So first off, I want to go right into answering those questions, that I said in the previous video that everybody's given me. And one of the questions that we see over and over and over again is, what should I do first? So let's dive into that and talk a little bit about what your absolute first move should be. So one of the most important things is you have to decide which general area of cybersecurity you want to go into or you want to enter. Figure out what that is. Now, there are technical roles, there are non-technical roles, and there are hybrid roles that require you to have some technical skill and do technical things while, also spending time doing more non-technical roles. So one of your first things that you absolutely have to do is figure out what type of job you want to do in cyber. Now, following this video session, there's actually another one that follows up to this that goes into some detail about many different roles that you can do in cyber. So as soon as you finish this particular video, go right and watch that one so that you can kind of get, peel the curtains back and look at some of the different job roles that you can do in cyber. And that will actually help you with this step, because this is the most important step, is figuring out what it is you think you want to do. And you really can't do that without doing some research and learning about the roles. And fortunately, I've already done most of that research for you, and I'm going to show you some of the roles in the next video. So first step, figure out what it is you want to do in cyber. All right. Next thing is, once you figured it out, after you've watched the next video, you'll want to then, dig deeper into that role that you pick. And when I say dig deeper, I mean research, ask people on LinkedIn and other social media outlets that work in that field. What are some key considerations, for that particular field? What's the entry level likelihood? A lot of people I find will sometimes watch movies and things like that, or they'll just kind of listen to me talk, or listen to an associate, or go to some seminar or something like that, and see us doing threat hunting demonstrations, or see us demonstrating reversing malware or something like that. And they say, that is a cool job. That's a sexy job. I want to do that job. So with that being said, what you have to consider a lot of times, not every role that you see happening in cyber is right for entry level. Like, you might not be able to enter that specific job as an entry-level job, or you as being a person that's coming into the industry. So look at the likelihood of you being able to get an entry-level position in that field or in that specific area. Look at the market in your geographic area. I live half the time in Chicago, half the time in the DC metro area. And, but I grew up in rural Mississippi, like as rural as you can be. My hometown had about 2,200 people in the entire town. And my senior class was I believe it was like 45, 50 people or something like that, right? So I grew up in a very, very rural area. The likelihood of me finding a cyber threat hunting job or a malware reverse engineering job in that area is pretty slim. So the opportunities may not be in certain geographic areas. Now, sure, we're entering a kind of a phase now as to where we're doing a lot of work from home and remote working. But one of the things I have to kind of point out to counter that is, just living in a market area like the DC metro area, or for those of you if you live like in the Houston area, or, the Bay Area, just hot spots for technology, in, Charlotte and places like that. What you find out is the opportunity there is more than just a company being based there, right? If you're in a hot spot, like I live in the Tyson's Corner area in DC. If you live in a hot spot and just being around there, going out to dinner, going to the mall to shop, going to meetups, cybersecurity meetups and things like that, the interactions, the networking, and the opportunities for jobs that never get posted on the internet are just overwhelming. There's an overwhelming amount of opportunity and jobs that are still available, in one-to-one interactions. So being in those local geographic areas and figuring out what's in your market is one important thing to kind of help you narrow down what you may want to focus on. Also, your background, can play a part. Now, I don't harp on background too much because I tell this story over and over again. Some of the best cyber people I've ever had a chance to run into and work with are people that didn't necessarily have a technical or engineering or computer science background to begin with. The very best pen tester I've ever hired, again, was a young lady that had no technical background formally. Her background was liberal arts, but she was very curious and a very good problem solver. And that made her into, the best pen tester I ever hired to this day. So consider those things. Don't get too wrapped up in any one of them, but they are real considerations, especially if you got family and stuff like that. You want to consider, are you prepared to move for the right role and the right salary? If you're not prepared to move, if moving is out of the question, then consider that, in your search here. Also, think about a time frame, right, of when you're going to enter this field. And when I say time frame, what I mean is, how soon are you ready to jump into this field? Are you ready to jump in right away? Are you ready to do you have a year's worth of savings saved up to where you can go out there and just look for jobs for the next year? Think about those things. And also think about your ability to learn and the speed at which you learn, your rate of absorbing information. If you tell me that I want to, change careers in 2 weeks, but you have no experience, no background whatsoever, then that may not be a realistic time frame, right? 2 weeks might not be realistic. However, if you can find an entry-level role where they make it clear that you can enter this cybersecurity role knowing nothing about anything, we're going to teach you everything from scratch, then, 2 weeks may be realistic, but that's probably going to be a role that's going to be paying a lot less than, a role that requires you to have done some studies and have a certification and stuff like that. So you want to keep those things in mind as you go through and do this. All right. So once you've picked your key area, drilled into it, looked at the considerations, kind of giving yourself a time frame as, when you want to do it, you also want to, when we talk about entry level, just revisiting that, some roles are more likely to include entry level positions than others, and some of the ones that you might be the most interested in could be roles that don't necessarily have an entry level. So that's something else to keep in mind there. In your geographic area, like I said, we're getting to the point to where there's less and less focus on you having to live at a specific place, but you may miss out on certain opportunities. And some of the really slick cybersecurity jobs that require you to have a clearance, if you want to work in intelligence or, military or something like that, you will have to, like if you need to be in a skiff or something like that, there's no remote skiffing, right? Like you're going to have to be at that facility in that skiff or that secure compartmentalized information facility if you want to work in that type of environment. So keep those things in mind, when we talk about specifically that. Now, going back here, another thing that you want to consider is after you pick an area, you've decided whether or not you're going to move or not, you also want to think about degree and certification requirements. And a lot of this you can find out by looking at, once you've figured out the specific job role that you want to do, or let's say you've narrowed it down to 4 or 5, then you can kind of go off on a tangent on each one of those. Look at all the job advertisements for those roles. Look at what they're asking for as far as degrees and certifications or experience, how much experience they want, if there's entry-level opportunity and that type thing, and drill into that. Figure out, do you want to put that time in to meet those requirements? And some of the best rewarding jobs have some pretty stiff requirements, even at the entry level point. But, you have to decide if it's worth it. What are these jobs? How long will it take you to achieve whatever those requirements are? And what's the cost? Certifications can be expensive, and degrees can be even more expensive. So you have to consider that and can decide if it's worth your effort if you want to dig into that. Now, one of the other things that you might want to consider as well is attending events, apply for jobs, just to kind of get yourself a nice feel for, what the job is going to entail and what they're going to be asking you. So one of the best ways to get over interview bugs about a new type of position or a new field is go on that first interview, get it down, figure out what they're asking you, what they want to know, and then go back and make yourself stronger in those areas. Also look at online training, online webinars, and trade shows. Now I'm going to introduce you to some good online training stuff in not the next video, but the one after that. Now, if you look at this graphic, the way I've set this up here, it kind of reflects what you're going to experience coming into this industry. As I said in the previous video, some of you were probably confused because you're getting conflicting information. So what you're doing jumping into cyber, it's like you're jumping in, a deep trench like what this guy is here. And it's dark and it's murky and there's all kinds of unknowns and things that you have to figure out. But as you start to piece together these things and figure these things out, you start to get, higher up in the surface, and you start to get more visibility, and the path that you need to take will become clearer and clearer as you do these things and nail these things down that I've specified here. Now, the first thing you should do after we've just talked about, figuring out what the role is and all that. But now the very next thing you should do right this second is jump to the very next video in the series, because now I'm going to take a deep dive into some very specific cybersecurity job roles. Thanks for watching this one, and jump right over to the next one.